Okay, so now we are going to look at Unit 9. So, as always, I'm going to play the listening twice. So, circle the correct answer, practice making complete sentences, and do the same thing for the chart. Okay, answer the questions. It looks like the questions are already all specific question format, so you don't need to make questions, but of course you need to make complete sentence answers. Okay, so here we go. Let's start with the listening.
Unit 9, Test. Section A, Listening.
Welcome, everybody, to the first meeting of the Neighborhood Watch Program. As you know, crime has become a big problem in the neighborhood recently. Somebody broke into the Wong's house last Saturday.
Oh,
really?
No!
Yeah, somebody broke into their house while they were having a barbecue in their backyard.
Yeah, Raymond and Eve are really upset. The robbers stole a computer, a new TV, and some cash.
So the robber just walked in the front door while they were cooking in the backyard? That's terrible.
Yeah, that's right. The front door wasn't locked.
You know, things have changed. We didn't used to lock our doors when we were home. Now we all have to remember to lock our doors all the time, even when we're home.
Of course. We don't want that sort of thing to happen again.
Well, this is why the Neighborhood Watch Program is such a good idea. We have to fight crime in our neighborhood. So tell all your neighbors to come to our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay, let's listen to it one more time.
Unit 9, Test. Section A, Listening.
Welcome, everybody, to the first meeting of the Neighborhood Watch Program. As you know, crime has become a big problem in the neighborhood recently. Somebody broke into the Wong's house last Saturday.
Oh,
really?
No!
Yeah, somebody broke into their house while they were having a barbecue in their backyard.
Yeah, Raymond and Eve are really upset. The robbers stole a computer, a new TV, and some cash.
So the robber just walked in the front door while they were cooking in the backyard? That's terrible.
Yeah, that's right. The front door wasn't locked.
You know, things have changed. We didn't used to lock our doors when we were home. Now we all have to remember to lock our doors all the time, even when we're home.
Of course. We don't want that sort of thing to happen again.
Well, this is why the Neighborhood Watch Program is such a good idea. We have to fight crime in our neighborhood. So tell all your neighbors to come to our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay. So let me ask a question before we begin. Who is talking? Who is talking? Okay, so we can say neighbors are talking. Neighbors are talking. Okay, and where are they? Okay, so we can say they are at a meeting. They are at a meeting, letter B. And then number 2, what is their relationship? And we already talked about this in the first question I asked, but we can say they are neighbors. They are neighbors, letter C. And then number 3, what is the purpose of their conversation? Okay, this we can also ask, why are they talking? Why are they talking? So we can say the purpose of their conversation is to prevent crime. Okay, the purpose of their conversation is to prevent crime. So letter A. And then number 4, how do they feel? And we can say they feel concerned. We can also say they are concerned. They feel concerned. Okay, and then let's look at the chart. So the first question says, what happened at the Wong's house? Okay, and we can say somebody or someone broke into their house. Okay, somebody broke into their house. So if you remember, break into, it means to enter illegally. Okay, so somebody broke into their house. Number 2, what did the robbers steal? Okay, so we can say the robbers stole. As you can see, the tense is past tense. Did and steal, we can say stole. The robbers stole a computer, a TV and some cash. So the robber stole a computer, a TV, and some cash. Okay, and then number 3, how did he get in? So we can say he got in through the front door. He got in through the front door. So let me ask a follow-up question. And if you remember, in Unit 9, we learned about past continuous tense, and we often use past continuous tense with past tense together. So, again, the question is, what were the Wongs doing when the robber broke in? Okay, what were the Wongs doing? Okay, so that's past continuous tense. What were the Wongs doing when the robber broke in? And that is past tense. When the robber broke in, what were the Wongs doing? Okay, so answer that question. Okay, so we can say the Wongs were having a barbecue in their backyard, or we can just say the Wongs were in their backyard or cooking in their backyard when the robber broke in. Okay, and if you remember, we can also use the word while with the past continuous. So we can say the robber broke in while the Wongs were cooking in their backyard. Okay, and then number 4, what did everyone used to do? Okay, so we can say everyone used to keep their doors unlocked. Everyone used to keep their doors unlocked. Or we can also say everyone didn't used to lock their doors. Everyone didn't used to lock their doors. Okay? And then number 5, what do they have to remember? So we can say they have to remember to lock their doors. They have to remember to lock their doors. And finally, number 6, when will they meet again? If you remember, this meeting was the first meeting of the neighborhood watch. Okay, so when will they meet again? We can say they will meet again in 2 weeks. They will meet again in 2 weeks. Okay, so moving on to grammar. As I mentioned, this is past continuous tense. So the question says, what were they doing at 9 o'clock last night? Okay, so I'm going to give you some time. Go ahead and pause the video and continue when you're finished. Okay, so we can say my daughter was doing her homework. My daughter was doing her homework. Number 2, I was watching my favorite TV show. Okay, and then number 3, we were cleaning up the kitchen. Okay, and there's a phrasal verb, clean up. Number 4, he was attending a meeting at our children's school. And number 5, the neighbors were playing cards with friends. Okay, and we're going to move on to grammar, the grammar lesson C, or exercise C. So the same thing, we're going to use the past continuous or simple past. Okay, so as you can see, we are going to practice using when and while. So with when, we use the past tense, and with while, we use the past continuous tense. And of course, you can use it also with other continuous tenses, not just past, but also present continuous. But in this activity, or in this unit, we talked about past continuous and simple past together. So even this these kinds of sentences, we often use it together with something that happened at that moment, like while they were doing these things. So, for example, maybe a policeman asks this question. What were you doing at 9 o'clock last night when the lights went out or when the robber broke in? So we might say, my daughter was doing her homework when the event happened, when the robber broke in or when the lights went out. Okay, so let's go ahead and do exercise C. You can pause the video and continue when you're finished. Okay, so let's do number 1. When the phone rang. Okay, and as I mentioned, when is used with the past tense. So when the phone rang, she was cooking dinner. Okay, another way to think about it is the past tense is the sudden activity, like something that happens in one moment. And then the past continuous is a continuing activity, something that was happening at that moment. Okay, so she was cooking dinner. This is the continuous activity, but while she was cooking dinner, the phone rang. Okay, and then number 2, he was sleeping. This is the continuous activity when the alarm went off. Okay, this is the past tense and the sudden activity. Number 3, while we were driving to school, it started to snow. Okay, number 4, while they were talking to us, their young child interrupted. Oops, no. Okay, sorry. Interrupted many times. Okay, and then number 5, I was studying when the dog began to bark. Okay, so I also want to practice making the other form of the sentence. So, for example, instead of while, we're going to use, instead of when, we are going to use while. And actually, you might have noticed, but I already said the other form of the sentence earlier. So we could also say, actually, let me change the color. Okay, so we could say, the phone rang while she was cooking dinner. Okay, let me move this here. Okay, the phone rang while she was cooking dinner. So again, this is the continuous activity. This is the sudden activity. Okay, or sudden event, not activity. Okay, so go ahead and do the same thing for numbers 2 through 5, and you can pause the video and continue when you're finished. Okay, sorry about all those notifications. Okay, number 2, we can say, while he was sleeping, the alarm went off. Okay, so if you use the when or while clause in the beginning, then you want to use a comma, just like here. Comma here, and then comma here. But if it's in the middle or at the end, you do not need a comma. Okay, number 3. While we were driving to school, it started to snow. Or we can say, we were driving to school when it started to snow. Okay, we were driving to school when it started to snow. Number 4. While they were talking to us, their young child interrupted many times. So we can say, they were talking to us when their young child interrupted us many times. Okay, there we go. Okay, and then the last one. I was studying when the dog began to bark. So we can say, while I was studying, the dog began to bark. Okay. And then finally, actually, yeah, we should do this too because I don't see any other places where we make questions. Yeah, so as you can see here, there's a question that says, what were they doing at 9 o'clock last night? Now, I want you to practice making questions. Okay, so I want you to use the main clause as the answer. Okay, so use the when or while clause in the question. Okay, so for example, for number 1, we can ask, what was she doing? Let me write this down. So this is the main clause, so we want to have this be the answer. What was she doing when the phone rang? Okay, so this is, or the when clause should be in the question. What was she doing when the phone rang? Okay, so I want you to practice that for numbers 2 through 5 as well. So again, pause the video and continue when you're finished. Okay, so number 2, what was he doing? Okay, this is the main clause, and then here's the when clause. Okay, what was he doing when the alarm went off? Okay, so the answer is he was sleeping. This is the main clause. And then I'll move this a little bit. Okay, number 3. Okay, what happened while you, this is you plural, while you were driving to school? Okay, what happened while you were driving to school? Okay, and then, so again, while we were driving to school is the while clause, and that's why I want you to include it in the question. And the main clause is the answer. Okay, number 4. What happened while they were talking to you? Okay, so you in this case is also you plural because it says us. So what happened while they were talking to you? And then number 5, what were you doing when the dog began to bark? Okay, what were you doing when the dog began to bark? And the answer is I was studying. Now, of course, you can also make questions with the when and while clauses as the answer. And you, like, for example, here, you can say, what happened while she was cooking dinner? Or, what happened while he was sleeping? Or, what were you doing when it started to snow? Or, what were they doing when or what were you doing? Let's see, while they were, actually, what were they doing is correct. What were they doing when their young child interrupted you many times? And finally, what were you doing when, no, that's this one already. So what happened while you were studying? Okay, I hope that's not too confusing, but again, it's really helpful to make past continuous questions as well. Okay, so now finally, let's do the reading. So read the journal entry, and then read the sentences, and circle yes or no if they are correct or not, and then fix them if they are not correct. Okay, so you can pause the video and continue when you're finished. Okay, so let's look at the journal together, the journal entry. About 3 years ago, before I moved to the United States, I was living in my country, El Salvador. One night, while my sister Maria and I slept, our grandmother was reading a book in the living room. Suddenly, my grandmother started to shout. I heard a very loud sound. Then, my grandmother grabbed us out of bed, and we ran out of the house. I was really scared. Someone told me it was an earthquake. Luckily, there was no damage to our house or the other houses on our street. But unfortunately, houses in other parts of the country were destroyed. The day after the earthquake, my friend Lena, who lived next door to me, was surprised to learn about the earthquake. She and her family were sleeping while everybody else in our neighborhood ran around and shouted. Nothing, not even an earthquake, prevents them from sleeping. So this is kind of an amusing story, but let's go ahead and take a look at number 1. The writer used to live in El Salvador. And the answer is yes. You can see here before I moved to the United States, I was living in my country, El Salvador. Number 2, the writer was reading a book when the story started. And this one is no. You can see here, the writer was sleeping. The writer was sleeping when the story started. Or you could say, the writer's grandmother was reading a book when the story started. So you can change it here. You can change the subject, or you can change the object. Or the predicate. So again, you can say the writer was sleeping when the story started, or the writer's grandmother was reading a book when the story started. Okay, number 3. The emergency was an earthquake. And the answer is yes. Okay, it mentions that very clearly here. And then number 4, there was damage to the writer's house. The answer is no. It says, luckily, there was no damage to our house. And then finally, number 5, the writer's friend was scared during the earthquake. And the answer is no. We can see here, the writer's friend Lena was surprised to learn about the earthquake, or you can say the writer's friend was sleeping during the earthquake. As you can see here, she and her family were sleeping. Okay, so the writer's friend was sleeping during the earthquake. Okay, and then exercise E. Write a narrative paragraph, and this just means like in a story format, where you're just telling the events and the plot. So you're not writing about your opinion, or you're not trying to persuade anyone. It's just a narrative. It's just a story. So write a narrative paragraph about an emergency that happened to you or someone you know. Use a separate this one, of course, or you can just type it. Okay, and then use these questions to help you. Who is the story about? When did it happen? Where did it happen? What were people doing when the story started? What was the emergency? How did the story end? Okay, so these are good questions to think about as you write a narrative. And as you can see, it uses a lot of the question words we practice. Who, when, where, what, how. Okay, so this is good practice as well. All right, well, we're going to stop here and do our final unit review in part 3.